Les heard a slight rustling and a yawn come from the bedroom, signaling his date was awake. "Coffee?" he asked in a slightly elevated volume. "Yeah," she replied surprisingly as Les spun the knob on the sink with one hand and flicked open the coffee pot lid with the other. As the coffee percolated, Les pulled a fingertip-sized bud out of his jar, and his eyes found his grinder, once a transparent clear that had been darkened by months of use. He could never find one that he didn't have to discard because it got too gummy from use. He broke the bud into 4 tiny pieces. He picked up his phone. The corner of the screen slightly cracked and a line burnt in the middle from falling asleep to YouTube. The previous backing track came blasting out as Les had forgotten to turn the volume down after his jam. "Sorry about that," he called to the back room, just in case she was suddenly startled. He chuckled to himself as he closed the lid of the grinder. It had taken enough time, but he'd learned to efficiently use one by realizing if you hold the bottom stationary, you can simply move the top and it saves a lot of heartache. Nothing in childhood is ever wasted. He picked up the orange and black pack of zigzags and went to peel a paper off the top, realizing the one waiting was slightly torn. It seemed to always be that way. "I swear they sell these with 4 already ripped," he thought to himself with a slight laugh. He removed the defective paper and crumbled it between his right index finger and thumb before dropping it into the ashtray. He opened the top of the rolling machine and with one finger pushed the tarp back into the middle of the machine to ensure there was a deep enough ditch to make sure the reefer didn't pop back out. Removing the top of the grinder, he dumped the green dust onto the tray as the slightly sweet, sticky smell hit his nostrils. He could hear the coffee groan as it filled the air and combined with the bud, and for a moment, he was distracted from the day's task that lay ahead of him once he hung up the phone. Les picked up a business card from a doctor's office he'd visited maybe about a year ago, and spun it slightly in his hand to the less resonated side, though honestly each side could be in competition with each other for that prestigious title. Not too much, not too little. He bounced his head in time to the blues in the background as he rolled the machine, enclosing the joint tighter and tighter while the coffee churned out its laborious hymnal. He separated the 2 rollers and grinned as he watched the perfectly rolled white tube spring from the orange roller. His eyes scanned the round 2-top table for his red lighter he knew he'd just bought. Noticing a few stray ashes on the table, Les grabbed a sponge, turned on the water, and dipped it into the bowl in the sink. It was important for him to make sure he wasn't another stoner musician stereotype of the dirty house. Nope, not this guy. "What was that last night?" a voice echoed from the bedroom. "Huh?" Les replied, barely able to make out the words through his ever-worsening tinnitus. He recalled seeing lights flash outside before the 2 of them retired to the bedroom for the night. "I'm pretty sure they were cop lights," said the voice louder. "Cop lights?" he replied as he screwed the joint into his lip. She was finishing off the nearly empty champagne bottle in bed with one hand while holding her phone in the other. Les slowly inhaled as he studied her tousled morning hair, remembering the night's activities before whimsically stepping over the crumpled skirt and heels to pass her the joint. As she inhaled, she choked. Just a little, with a sprinkle of laughter thrown in as she flipped through her phone and showed Les a meme. Les sat down on the corner of the bed and eyed the glowing ash as he noticed a small bit fall onto the floor as she handed the joint back. As he lazily studied her shoe, then absent-mindedly glancing past all the memorabilia on the wall, he slowly took a drag. Posters and gig flyers of legends from every genre, from George Thorogood to Guns N' Roses and AC/DC to Sisters of Mercy, Stray Cats, and Jimi Hendrix. His attention wheeled back to her shoes, and Les noticed the caps on the left heel needed replacing soon. Stretching his shoulders and neck while holding the smoke in, he heard a small crack from his back as the pain shot through his shoulder like nothing new. Same old shit, just another day. He winced and sharply inhaled as silently as he could without alerting her to just how bad it hurt. Why ruin the good mood? Nothing she could do about it. The thing about chronic pain is that it's invisible, so it's easy to keep it that way, and that's exactly what Les had gotten used to. Les let the joint dangle from his lip and smoothed the sides off his hair back and opened his phone. He silently groaned, thinking about the day's activities that lie ahead. "Why'd you stop playing?" she asked while the light from her phone reflected off her glasses as she absent-mindedly scrolled through her social media. Her voice was a warm distraction and reeled him back in from his mental cocktail of pain, why it happened, and what he still had to do today. "I got a call and I actually have to go take care of a few things fairly soon," he said, passing her back the joint. "Yeah, I actually have to get going anyway," she said as she flicked her phone off and reached her fingers out. Inhaling and slightly coughing, she rose from the red sheets and leopard print comforter and smoothed out the spot she was sitting in, while simultaneously looking for any bobby pin she may have lost. Les could see her silent look of satisfaction as she located each bobby pin one by one. Ah, yes, coffee, he remembered. At least one thing was going to go right today. Sometimes a good cup of coffee was the only thing he could depend on in the past. Nothing from youth is ever wasted. Out in the kitchen, the coffee had been ready for a few minutes and smelled divine, mixing with the sticky, sweet smell that barely hung in the air. John Lee Hooker continued on as Les retrieved 2 black mugs from the silver rack above the waiting coffee. How do you take it? As he began to tilt the pot, carefully pouring into the first mug. Just a little milk if you have it, she replied. Les smiled and said a silent prayer, thanking whatever hidden force persuaded him to get groceries yesterday. Cool, he said, a slight smile in his voice. Watching the coffee turn from onyx to a cool cream color, his curiosity pulled at him, reminding him of the flashing lights outside last night. He finished stirring her cup with a tiny clink and placed it on the counter after retrieving a dry sponge. Les silently wiped the counter after dampening just the edge of the sponge that was waiting on the side of the sink, carefully pouring the contents of the steaming pot into his own mug, ensuring not to overpour. Les nodded his head to the blues melting in the background. The barely audible sound of a zipper followed by a slight cough came from the bedroom. With his fingers wrapped around the handle, he absent-mindedly gazed at the front door while still thinking about the lights outside from the prior evening, mixed with fleeting thoughts of the activity that shortly followed once the door was closed. The approaching unmistakable click of heels broke his hypnosis, and he reached back with a slight twist for the waiting prepared coffee. Got it? Les asked as he handed her the cup from the top, ensuring she had a grasp on the handle of the scalding ebony mug. Les pursed his lips to the edge in expectation of the heat, and the occasional sound of coffee sips were shared in silence as they nodded their head in rhythm to the track with a friendly shared silence while the guitar filled the gaps. As the silence continued, his curiosity grew over the flashing police lights from last night as he sipped his coffee. Staring absent-mindedly into the air, he half studied the music, while flecks of the memory of the lights went through his head. Making his way across the wooden floor, he noticed the song was ending. Reaching out and grasping the cold door handle, a gentle breeze blew over him as he opened the door. Lazily stepping over the threshold, he squinted his eyes as the morning light blended with the smell and taste of the coffee. Stopping mid-sip with his mug to his face, his eyes widened as he noticed something out of place. Holy shit. It was a chalk outline on the steps.